The first snowfall came early that year. No one expected it. Not this deep in the valley, not this heavy. It covered the trees like shrouds and silenced the forest, the way death quiets a room. The old trapper sat in the doorway of his cabin, watching the flakes settle on the wooden porch, the chopped logs, the rusted axe. Inside the cabin, the chains rattled. He didn't flinch. His name was Callum, though no one had used it in years. The town below just called him the Trapper, if they spoke of him at all. Most didn't. They remembered stories. How he once hunted wolves bigger than men, how he lived alone after the war, how his cabin stood where no path led. But none of them knew about the girl. She was no more than 17, pale, quiet, hands bloodied from fighting the restraints. Her wrists bore the raw truth of steel on flesh. Her name, if she had one, he didn't ask. She'd come to him the way wounded things do, screaming, bleeding, then suddenly silent. He kept her chained to the bed in the back room, not cruelly, not violently, but with a certainty that had no kindness in it. She never begged, never asked why, and he never explained. The cabin smelled of pine, old leather, and ash. There were no pictures, no laughter, just wood, fire, metal, and that sound, chains shifting on cold nights. Callum fed her, cleaned her wounds, changed the cloth when the bleeding returned, but he never touched her face, never looked her in the eye longer than a second. One night her voice broke the silence. "You're waiting for someone," she said. He paused, mid-step. "I can feel it," she added. He didn't reply. She leaned back, her eyes hollow but sharp. "You think I'm bait." He met her gaze then, and for a flicker, there was something behind his eyes. Regret, maybe, or memory. "You were already bleeding when I found you," he said. "So were you," she answered. He didn't argue. That night, he didn't sleep. Sat on the floor near the fireplace, gun in his lap. The snow deepened. The trees groaned. And in the distance, dogs howled. 3 days later, they came. 3 men, coats stitched with teeth, boots muddy from crossing where no map dared mark. Bounty hunters, faces like dried bark, eyes that weighed flesh. One of them carried a coil of rope, another a flask, the third a ledger. They knocked once. Callum didn't answer. So they walked in. The girl heard voices. Not shouting, not yet, but low, calculating. Then came footsteps, heavy, searching. She wrapped the chains around her wrist twice, held her breath. The door creaked open. A man with a scar over his lip looked at her, then smiled. There she is. He didn't look surprised, just pleased, like finding a coin under old floorboards. "She speak?" he asked over his shoulder. "She bites," Callum replied from the hall. "You trained her well. She's not a dog." The man chuckled. "No, she's worse." They stepped into the room together, and the girl pressed back against the wall. Not out of fear, not anymore, just habit. "You were supposed to keep her safe," the scarred man said. "I did," Callum answered. "Until now." The other 2 men moved through the cabin, checking windows, measuring escape. One of them lit a match, sniffed. "Dry walls," he muttered. "Don't," Callum warned, but it was too late. The match hit the floor. A second flame, then another. The girl closed her eyes. The cabin had one truth: it burned fast. The walls drank flame like whiskey. Heat climbed the beams. Smoke curled and screamed. Callum grabbed the rifle from behind the door, fired once, then again. One of the men fell. The ledger burned beside him. The girl screamed through clenched teeth as fire kissed the iron around her wrists. Callum crossed the room. Chains sizzled. The lock fought him. He tore at the bed frame with bare hands. Wood cracked. Steel groaned. Then, snap. He lifted her over his shoulder and turned toward the back. The world behind them became fire. Snow crushed the porch under their boots as Callum burst through the rear door. The girl slung over his shoulder like a wounded deer. The heat behind them roared, an angry beast consuming everything they'd left inside. Sparks shot into the trees. Flames climbed like they knew the way. The girl coughed, half-conscious, eyes watering from smoke. Her voice cracked. "You should have let me burn." Callum didn't answer, just kept moving. Behind them, a shot rang out. Bark exploded from a tree near his head. The second bounty hunter was still alive, still chasing. Another bullet missed wide. He ran with the blind confidence of someone who thought fire wouldn't follow him. Callum ducked into the pines. He knew this part of the woods better than his own hands. Carried her through a gully, across a frozen creek, and up a ridge where wind bit hard. By the time he stopped, her breathing had steadied. The chains still clung to her ankles, dragging through snow. They clanged like bells in a funeral march. "You hurt?" he asked. She looked at him with eyes like glass. "You never asked that before." He didn't respond, just started a fire. They huddled beneath a low rock outcrop as the storm closed in. Nightfall came with a silence more brutal than any scream. "You knew they'd come," she whispered. "I did. And you kept me anyway." He nodded. She shifted, metal dragging through the frost. "Why?" Callum watched the fire. His face was lined with something older than age. "They're not just bounty hunters. They're cleaners. Burn everything. Erase names. Make sure nobody asks questions." She waited. "I was one of them. A long time ago." That silenced her. He leaned forward, feeding dry moss into the flame. "Until they sent me to a village with no name. Told me it was a rebel outpost. Told me to clear it." His voice cracked. Not from emotion, but from truth finally spoken aloud. There were no rebels. Just farmers. Families. He stared into the fire like it owed him penance. "I left after that. Burned my ledger. Went north. Promised I'd never follow another order." She pulled the chain tighter around her wrist. Not to escape, but to feel something. "So why me?" Callum met her gaze. "Because your name was on a list, and I still had one ledger left." Silence stretched. The wind screamed above the rocks, but couldn't touch them here. "My name," she said slowly, "is June." Callum nodded, committing it to something deeper than memory. "What's mine?" he asked. She didn't hesitate. "Callum." He blinked. "How do you—" "You said it once," she said, "in your sleep." They didn't speak again for hours. When she woke, the fire was low, and Callum was gone. Panic bloomed. She rose too fast, fell, cursed. Chains caught on roots. She scrambled upright, heart pounding, breath white in the cold. But then, footprints. Wide, heavy. She followed them, stumbling into the tree line. The snow swallowed her steps, but his were clear. He hadn't run. He was kneeling by a stone. A small cairn, recently built. He didn't turn when she approached. "She was 16, he said. "Died last winter. Fever." June said nothing. "She didn't scream," he added. "Didn't cry. Just faded, like snow and fire." He stood, brushing snow from his knees. "She wasn't mine, but I buried her like she was." They stood there, wind cutting through them like knives. "Is that why you kept me alive?" June asked. "Because I reminded you of her?" Callum looked at the stone. "No." "Then why?" He looked at her. "Because I couldn't save her, but I could try with you." She stared at him. For the first time, something in her eyes broke. Not anger, not fear, recognition. They returned to the shelter before sunrise. Callum had reinforced the fire, wrapped June in extra hides, and now sat with his rifle across his knees. He hadn't slept. Again. She watched him from the corner of her eye. "You think the third one will come?" she asked. He nodded. "Alone?" "No." June tightened the cloak around her shoulders. Her wrists still burned. The iron had cooled, but the memory of flame lingered. "I don't understand," she whispered. "Why them? Why me?" Callum shifted. The rifle creaked as he adjusted it. "There's something you know," he said. "Something you don't remember yet. That's why they want you dead. Not gone, dead, burned, buried." She swallowed hard. "What did I do?" "Not what you did," he said. "Who you belong to." The fire hissed. Callum stood, went to his saddlebag, and pulled out a letter wrapped in oilskin. It was charred at the edges but intact. He handed it to her. She unfolded it slowly. It wasn't her handwriting, but her name was there. 3 times. At the top, June Elrin. At the middle, protected asset. And at the bottom, order to eliminate if compromised. She read it again, and again. "What does this mean?" Callum knelt beside her, his voice low. "It means you were valuable to someone powerful, enough to be erased when they lost control." She stared at the letter. "I don't remember any of it." "That's how they do it," he said. "Erase the mind before the body. Makes the fire feel like mercy." For a long time, the only sound was the wind pushing snow across stone. "I dreamed of a white hallway once," June said. "Clean, cold. A man in a coat told me to keep quiet. Said it was safer if I didn't know my name." Callum didn't move. "I thought it was just a nightmare," she added. "It was real," he said. June closed her eyes. "What was I?" Callum's voice was hoarse. "Not a weapon, not a spy. Something between, something they built or broke." A crow called outside. Short. Urgent. Callum stood in a breath. Go inside, he said. June didn't argue. He stepped out into the open, snow up to his knees. The crow circled once, then vanished beyond the ridge. Callum raised his rifle. Waited. Nothing. Then, a whisper in the snow. A movement where no tracks should be. He fired once. The shot echoed like thunder. Silence followed. Then laughter. It came from the trees. Low. Calm. Close. Still a good shot, old man, said a voice. Callum didn't answer. Just scanned the woods. You left us without saying goodbye, the voice continued. No note. No flames. Just disappeared. I was done, Callum said. No one's ever done. Not with us. From the snow emerged a man with white hair braided down his chest, eyes like cracked glass. His coat bore the same stitching, fangs, bones, a cleaner. Callum kept the rifle steady. You're alone? He asked. The man smiled. I'm the only one you'll see. The others wait for the signal. Callum didn't blink. She's not leaving. She doesn't have to, the man said. We only need her silence. Callum fired again. The man dodged, rolled, came up laughing. Still stubborn. Callum chambered another round. June watched from the shadows inside, heart pounding. The chains still hung from her ankles, but she'd learned to move with them now. Quiet. Controlled. She gripped the knife Callum had given her and crept along the back wall. Outside, the snow fell harder. The man rushed forward. Callum fired. Missed. Steel met skin. They crashed into the snow, snarling, fists landing like hammers. The man reached for Callum's throat. June screamed. The man looked up. She was there, blade raised, and for the first time, he looked afraid. The knife didn't shake in her hand. June's grip was firm, fingers bloodless, knuckles white from the cold and resolve. She stepped closer to the man atop Callum, blade pointed at the soft hollow below his chin. I remember your voice, she said. From the hallway. The man froze. Just enough for Callum to twist free, roll over, and strike. A sickening crunch followed. The man collapsed, choking on blood and broken teeth. Callum stood, chest heaving, rifle gone, face marked by a deep gash across the cheek. You sure? He asked her. June nodded. He used to come in after lights out, whisper things. Callum didn't speak, just kicked the man's body over and searched his coat. No documents, no ID, just one item, a polished black coin. Callum held it up. Execution token, he muttered. Means the girl's confirmed. It's official now. June took the coin, turned it over. They really wanted me gone. Still do. They burned the body, not out of hate, out of habit, out of understanding. The fire crackled as flesh turned to smoke. June didn't look away. He wasn't alone, she said. No, Callum agreed. They're going to burn the valley. He looked at the trees. We have 2 days, maybe less. She nodded. Then we go where it started. Callum frowned. You remember? Not much, she said, but enough. They left that night. No camp, no fire, just breath and snow. The wind howled like a thing betrayed. Wolves tracked them for miles but kept their distance. Callum still walked ahead, but June no longer followed. She moved beside him now. At dawn, they reached the cliffs. Below, a plateau. Concrete, glass, hidden under snow, but not forgotten. June stared. I know this place. Callum waited. There were beds here, clean, cold. They kept us quiet. Said it was for protection. She walked slowly down the slope. They gave us numbers. I was 17. He was 18. The boy in the next bed. He used to sing when the others slept. She stopped. They killed him first. Her voice didn't break. It had nothing left to break. Callum followed her down. Inside the ruined structure, walls had collapsed, but the steel doors remained. Scorch marks, broken monitors, the silence of failure. This was a trial site, Callum whispered. Before the war. June nodded. They said we were safer than the outside, that the fire couldn't reach us here. She touched the wall. Her hand trembled now, not from fear, from memory. There was a doctor, she said. White coat, hair like thread. She smiled a lot, said my blood was clean. Callum's jaw tightened. Clean meant programmable. June didn't blink. I think she's still alive. He looked at her. Where? She closed her eyes. South. Mountain Road, near the old copper mine. There's a clinic with no name. They kept records. Callum exhaled. Then we go south. They camped that night in the remains of a metal cell. June sat where her younger self once lay. The cot rusted beneath her. She ran a hand across the bolts in the wall. She used to braid my hair. Said it kept me calm. like I was hers. Callum didn't speak. She gave me books, fiction, said it made me rounder, like I wasn't just a line of code. Outside, snow fell without sound. June curled under the hide blanket. "Why do you stay?" she asked suddenly. Callum across the room shifted. "I've done enough wrong," he said. "So this is redemption?" "No," he said quietly. "This is the first thing that isn't." She didn't respond, just turned her back to the wall and let sleep take her. Callum watched her, the way the blanket moved with her breath, the way her fingers stayed curled, even in dreams. Then he turned his gaze to the black coin lying on the ground near the fire. Tomorrow would bring more than snow. They reached the old copper road before dusk. The mountain loomed to the south, jagged and black against a storm-heavy sky. The wind had shifted again, warmer now, but sick with the smell of fire. June moved with purpose, no longer afraid. She wore the chains like armor now, wrapped around her forearm, twisted through her belt. The sound of them no longer dragged. It warned. Callum kept watch from behind, rifle over his shoulder. He'd said little since they left the ruin, but something in his posture had changed. More alert, more distant. They found the clinic behind a broken ridge, half buried under ice and rock. A single light flickered in the back window. "She's here," June said. Callum nodded. They entered through the rear, weapons drawn. The hallway smelled like antiseptic and old lies. Inside the second room, a woman sat at a desk. Gray hair, small glasses, lab coat too clean for the chaos outside. She didn't look surprised. "June," the woman said. "I wondered when you'd come." June stepped forward. "You told me I was safe." "You were," the woman replied. "Until you weren't." Callum closed the door behind them. The woman looked at him. "You're the trapper, the deserter. I'm whatever you call what's left," he said. She folded her hands. "You shouldn't have brought her here." June raised the knife. "Why not?" The woman's eyes glistened. "Because the moment you remember everything, they'll know. You're connected, designed that way. Triggers, codes, fail-safes. Your mind is a detonator." Callum stepped between them. "Turn it off." The woman shook her head. "It's not that simple. Try." She stood, walked to a cabinet, pulled out a file folder thicker than a Bible, laid it on the table. "Her name was never June," she said. June didn't move. "It was Alira," the woman continued. "You were part of a group, 6 children, hybrid training, half neural net, half trauma-forged memory. You weren't meant to survive. Just observe, absorb." June stepped forward, her voice brittle. "And then?" The woman closed her eyes. "You were the only one who lived." Callum's knuckles tightened around the rifle. The woman opened the file. Pages, diagrams, photographs, a series of dates, operations, burned towns, some crossed out, one circled in red. "This was the final test," she said. "The cabin, the chains, the fire." June looked down at the file. The cabin was there, aerial view, thermal scan. "It was staged?" she asked. The woman didn't answer. Callum fired into the wall beside her head. "Answer her." The woman flinched. "Partially. We needed stress. A survival spiral. You activated faster than expected." June staggered back. "So none of it was real?" The woman looked at her. "All of it was." Callum turned to June. "We need to leave. Now." But June stood frozen. In her mind, doors opened. White halls returned. Voices, faces, screams. Her eyes widened. Blood trickled from her nose. "She's slipping," the woman said. "You waited too long." Callum reached for her, but June pushed him away. "No," she said. "Let me feel it." She fell to her knees, breath ragged. "I remember the boy, the one who sang. He held my hand before they took him." The woman whispered, "Alira, you have to calm down." June looked up. Her eyes had changed. Darker, focused. "You don't get to use my name," she said. Callum helped her up. "We burn this place, all of it." June nodded. Together they poured kerosene down the halls. Every room, every drawer, every file. The woman sat silently at her desk. As Callum lit the flame, she spoke one last time. "There are others. Like her." "I know," he said. Then fire swallowed the building. Outside, under falling snow, June watched the smoke rise into the cold night sky. Her hands trembled, but not from fear. Callum handed her the black coin. "You still want revenge?" he asked. June turned the coin in her palm. "No," she whispered. "I want them to remember what they made." They walked for 2 days without speaking, not because they had nothing left to say, because silence was finally safe. The trail bent westward, away from the smoke, away from what had burned. Callum's limp was worse now. The wound on his side had reopened during the climb. June noticed, but he waved her off each time. "You're bleeding." Not enough to stop. They camped beneath a rock shelf the second night. No fire, just breath, just stars. June sat beside him, chain-wrapped arms resting on her knees. "You think they'll come?" she asked. "They always do." She nodded. Then, "You think I'm still her?" Callum didn't answer at first. Finally, "You're more than what they made." It wasn't comfort, just fact. She looked up at the stars. He used to name them. The boy said it made the sky feel smaller. Callum leaned back. Snowflakes landed on his eyelashes. "You remember his name?" he asked. June hesitated, then nodded. "Revan." They sat in it. Let it hurt. The next morning, the birds didn't sing. The sky hung low, swollen with gray. They reached the ridgeline before noon. Below, the valley stretched quiet and untouched like the world before war. June stopped walking. Callum turned. "You all right?" She didn't answer, just stared at the emptiness ahead. "There's a village there," she said. "I don't remember it, but I know it." He stepped beside her. "It's on no map." "They erased it," she replied, "like they erased me." She took off the chain from her belt, let it fall to the snow. The sound it made was final. "I'm done carrying that," she said. Callum nodded, but he didn't drop his rifle. "You should go," she said. He looked at her. "You know I won't." She gave him a small smile. "Then help me build something that can't be burned." They descended together. It took 3 days to reach the edge. The houses were gone, but the bones of them remained. Beams, stone, broken wells. June touched each one like a ghost retracing its steps. They built a shelter from what they could salvage. No roof, just walls to keep out wind. Every night she dreamed. Of voices, of fire, of hands pulling her from a bed and dragging her into white light. She woke with blood in her mouth from biting her own tongue. Callum stayed close, but never asked what she saw. He didn't have to. One morning, she found him kneeling at the edge of the forest, rifle across his lap, staring into the trees. "How many?" she asked. He didn't look back. 3, maybe 4. "Cleaners?" "Worse." She nodded. "What do you want to do?" he asked. June stepped forward, eyes steady. "We let them come." They waited. That night, when the fire started again, this time in the trees, June didn't flinch. She stood outside the half-built shelter, coat open, wind biting her skin. When the first figure emerged from the smoke, she didn't reach for the knife. She walked, slow, measured. The figure raised a weapon. She raised her voice. "I remember the codes," she said. "I remember the boy. I remember the hallway. I remember the fire." The weapon hesitated. She stepped closer. "I'm not the girl in chains anymore." A pause. Then a shot rang out. Not from them. Callum. The figure dropped. Then the others came. 3. Then 5. Then more. But something had shifted. They weren't organized. They didn't speak. Some didn't shoot. They stared, because they recognized her, and they didn't know what to do with someone who had survived. In the end, only 2 ran. The others lay in the snow. June stood among the bodies, chest heaving, hands shaking. Not from fear, from memory. Callum came to her side. His breath was thin. He was pale. "Should have stayed hidden," he said. "No," she replied. "We needed this." He fell forward, knees buckling. She caught him. The wound was too deep. He'd known, and still he came. "Don't say anything," she whispered. He didn't. He just looked at her, and then he was gone. She buried him under the old birch tree, the rifle beside him, the black coin on his chest. No marker, no words, just silence. Weeks passed. Then one day she heard voices down the valley. Children. Laughter. She stepped outside, the wind lifting her hair. She didn't hide. She waited. Spring came slow. The valley thawed like a wound trying to scab. Ice melted in silence. Birds returned, cautious, like they remembered fire. June didn't rebuild the cabin. She left the walls as they were, half-standing, wind-bitten. A skeleton of shelter, a monument to everything lost and everything that chose not to die. She spent her days walking the ridges, learning the shape of the land the way some learn prayer. Her nights were quiet, but not hollow. She listened for him. Not his voice, just his presence. In wind, in silence, in the way her hand hovered over the rifle and then didn't take it. The children came from the east, not many. 3 at first, then 5. They didn't speak much, eyes too wide, bones too thin. But when they saw her, they didn't run. She gave them bread, water, quiet. She let them stay. One day, one of them, small, fierce, with half his hair burnt away, pointed to the chains June had wrapped around a beam near the old shelter and asked, "Were those yours?" June looked at them for a long time. "No," she said, "not anymore." She taught the children how to build walls that breathe, how to listen for snow snakes, how to boil roots and read cloud lines. And slowly they began to laugh again. One carved stories into bark, another painted dreams on stone. A girl with silent feet watched June the closest, mimicked the way she carried herself, the way she turned when the wind changed. The world didn't heal, but pieces of it stopped bleeding. At night, June sat alone sometimes, tracing the sky. The stars she used to fear now felt like old voices. One she named Revan, another she named Callum. She didn't cry anymore, but her hands still trembled when the wind got too quiet. One evening, she followed a crow deeper into the forest than usual. It landed on a twisted stump. Beneath it, half buried in frost and time, was a satchel, Callum's. She hadn't known he left it there. Inside, wrapped in oiled cloth, was his journal. Few pages, fewer words, but each one carved like it hurt to write. On the last page, "If she survives, she becomes more than memory. She becomes myth, and myths can't be chained." She held the book to her chest, didn't speak, didn't move. The crow stayed on the stump until sundown, then flew west. When she returned, the youngest child asked if she'd been crying. "No," she said, then paused. "But I saw something beautiful." By summer, there were nearly 20 people in the valley. No one asked who led. No one asked who had bled to build it. They just followed her, quietly. One morning, a stranger arrived, cloaked, thin. He carried a broken weapon and a letter. He said nothing, just handed her the paper and waited. She unfolded it. The seal was red. She read it, then burned it without a word. He watched the flames. "What now?" he asked. She handed him a bowl of soup. "Now you rest." That night she dreamed again of the hallway, but this time the lights were off. The doors were open. The children were free. No chains, only echoes, only footprints leading outward. The next day she climbed the ridge and planted a flag. No symbol, just black cloth, a warning or a promise.